Jane, burdened with hardship, finally gets her first big break, with dreams and aspirations dead at dusk. Annie ends up with blood on her hands, one who looked up to Jane while also jealous of her success. Jealousy is a strong emotion, sure. But how did it end in murder? This is the case of Jehanne Roye. This video does contain descriptions of graphic and violent content. Viewer discretion is advised. As you gathered from the last video, there was a lot of jealousy surrounding the Dean household. Jane would describe herself as everything Eunice wished Annie was, and Annie was treated horribly by Eunice and even the father Wilhelm. And later, after Wilhelm died, he carried that hatred to his grave. Annie would constantly accuse Jane of messing up her clothing, while Eunice would always look the other way. And Jane would be kind to Annie even through this, knowing how hard it was for her and having the empathy of someone who had been through a lot, which from the last part is so clear because she basically lost everything. Annie had word from Jane that she was leaving in a month for Providence to meet with Miss Emily Davis, a seamstress who lived in another, much kinder home. Eunice never really knew that Jane was leaving, other than a small suspicion after Jane asked about it, and Eunice claimed that Jane flushed and stated that it was a mere curiosity when she questioned her about it. Jane would fear confronting Eunice and would confide in the Dean's cook. Hester Bell, the cook, would say that Jane looked pale and frightened. She would ask Jane if she was afraid of Eunice or Annie, and Jane would reply, both, in their own ways. Hester would give the blessing and provide Jane with a satchel of dried apples and some bread for the journey. Though these gifts would prove pointless, because on the morning of November 13th, 1826, a woman's body would be found dead in the orchards of the Dean property. Samuel Wright, a local mill worker, would hear a sharp cry and assume it was a fox. He would think little of it, as there were lots of foxes, he claimed, at that time of year. He heard about it the next morning and regretted not investigating. The victim's face was completely unrecognizable, and a hearth iron would sit nearby. Reverend Whitcomb would question the Deans, and Jane would be declared missing. Though, after questioning Annie, Whitcomb would be provided a thorough and intense confession. Annie had murdered Jane in a fit of rage. Here would lie Annie's confession.
I, Annie Dean, being of sound body, though not of tranquil mind, do herewith lay bare the full and sorrowful account of what I have done, and how I came to do it. The weight of my action presses upon me with such force as to make breathing a burden, and the passing of hours a punishment. I shall not plead for mercy, only that the truth be known, and that the burden of silence be lifted from my heart. It was upon the morning of the 13th day of November, in this present year, that I did commit the most grievous act of sin against heaven and man. I took the life of Jane Roye, a young woman of French origin who had come to dwell with us in our home on Main Street, having been employed as a visiting seamstress by my mother, Mrs. Eunice Dean. I write this not for forgiveness, though I do crave it, but for the setting down of the truth, as I alone know it. My heart is heavy and my hand trembles, but I must needs unburden my soul. Of Jane's coming. Jane Roye came to our home by way of Mr. Lyman, the mill overseer, who spoke high of her skill with the needle and her quiet manner. She had arrived from France 3 years prior, I was told, having fled some hardship I never heard the full of. She was beautiful, too beautiful, and she bore herself with a pride that belied her station. My mother, ever mindful of appearances, took to her quickly, praising her stitches and her silence, and gave her the commission to alter our gowns for the winter season. Jane was, by all accounts, a capable and diligent worker, and her needle was of such skill that even my mother, ever critical and rarely pleased, came to trust her with the most delicate of commissions. She was fair in face and gentle of speech, and she bore her burdens with a quietness that made her seem almost saintly to those who did not know her heart as I came to know it. She was kind to our servants, patient with our children, and, to my mother's mind, everything I was not. Where I was clumsy, she was deft. Where I was loud, she was poised. And my mother, God help her, took every opportunity to make the comparison plain. "Why can't you be like Jane?" she'd say. "Look how she carries herself. Look how she obeys." "Jane stitches like a lady born," she would say. "She has refinement, Annie, something you've yet to learn." I would watch Jane from the staircase, from the garden, from behind half-closed doors, and see how my mother doted upon her, how she praised her, how she trusted her, and I, her own daughter, was cast behind like a tattered apron. I hated her for it, but I bore it until the morning I saw Jane in the green frock. The days before, tension brewed in the house many weeks before that day. Jane grew distant, and I could hear her whispering by the fire at night with her friend, Mrs. Davis, who worked in Providence. She was planning to leave Slatersville and leave us behind, all of us. She spoke of Providence as though it were Eden. She said she had a place waiting, and that she would never again sew hems for people who looked down on her. I heard her say once, "I will not die in this house." I knew she meant to go. But she said not a word to me. Not a farewell, not a kindness. She was just going to vanish, like all the others. Like my sister who married and moved to Boston. Like my father who died when I was 5. Like every girl who ever got a chance and took it. The morning of November 13th, I awoke before the sun. The air was sharp and bitter, and the frost clung to the windows like spider's lace. I had not slept. I had dreamt of Jane, of her face, of her voice, and of my mother's cruel tongue. I went to the laundry cupboard to fetch my green frock, the one with the velvet trim that grandmother had sent from Worcester. It was gone. In its place was a ragged apron and nothing more. I knew at once. Jane had taken it. She meant to wear it to Providence, no doubt thinking it finer than anything she owned. I saw red, not just for the theft, but for the insult. She would go dressed in my best, and leave me here with nothing. I saw her from my window, and I went to meet her. I had no plan, no weapon, no thought beyond a confrontation. It was mine, my only frock of any worth, given to me by my Aunt Margaret 2 years past. I had not worn it since the spring, and when I went to my chest to find it, it was gone. I asked no one, for fear of sounding petty, but I knew it had vanished. And then, on the morning of her intended departure, yes, for she had planned to flee us, there she was in the orchard, wearing it as she walked among the apple trees at dawn. The quarrel. I demanded to know why she had taken it. She did not deny it. She said she was leaving for Providence to stay with a Mrs. Davis, and that she needed the garment for the journey. The gall. I asked her, "And what of Mother? What of your work? You leave without word in the dead of morning?" She said, "I owe your mother nothing." I said, "And me?" She looked at me then, and her face changed. She said, "You're just a girl, Annie. You'll understand in time." And that was the wound that bit deepest. Just a girl, just a shadow, a nothing, a wretch in her eyes. Then she turned her back to go. I saw red again. I saw her stepping away without apology, without regret. I thought of all the times I had been scolded so Jane could be praised. I thought of the bruises my mother left when she said Jane would never behave this way. I remember screaming at her. I remember grabbing her sleeve. She pulled away, and in doing so tore the frock. That was when rage overtook me. My eyes saw red, as they say, though I had never believed such tales before. I do now. I do not know how I came to hold the hearth iron. There was one kept by the garden shed, for the scullery sometimes used the hearth out there. I remember lifting it. I remember her turning, her mouth open to speak, maybe to cry out, maybe to plead. And then I struck her. I did not plan it, I swear before God I did not. But I struck her. Once, only once, on the head. She fell. There was blood. Her eyes fluttered, and she whispered something, perhaps a prayer. I do not know. I knelt beside her. I shook her. I cried. I tried to wake her, but she did not stir. I hid her and I ran. I ran back to the house, to my chamber, and I stayed there until the news came that her body had been found at dusk, near the orchard's edge. I wept then, not for her, but for the knowledge that I had crossed a line no one can ever uncross. That I had become what my mother had always feared I would be. Not a disgrace, not a disappointment, but a murderer. After I dragged her behind the orchard wall. I covered her with fallen branches and leaves. I wiped my hands on my apron and ran to the house. My mother did not notice my absence. She never does. When they found her that evening, I did not speak. But the guilt, it clung to me like ice. And when Reverend Whitcomb questioned me, I could not hold it in. I told him everything. Closing. I write this now with a trembling hand. I make no defense of my actions, for God alone may judge me, and his justice is perfect. I only ask that you remember me not as a monster, but as a girl caught in a storm of jealousy, rejection, and despair. I did not plan her death, but I did cause it. And I am sorry. May the Lord have mercy upon my soul. And if I am to be judged, let it be by a God who knows how cruel this world can be to girls who are different, and to those who are left behind. Signed this 15th day of November, in the year of our Lord 1826, Annie Dean, Slatersville, Rhode Island. Witnessed by Constable William R. Holcomb, Magistrate Josiah L. Town.
H.W. Belling, the constable of the town, would investigate Annie's case. He was very elitist and racist as well. He would publish his report detailing Annie's confession and the evidence he had gathered against her. His report would include insensitive denunciations of Jane's immigration status, several times denoting people's occupation and foreign stature. His conclusion would be as follows.
Act of murder cannot be excused. This office recognizes the extenuating provocations and emotional instability of a young woman misled by a cunning foreigner. Miss Roye, by all accounts, sowed discord in a well-ordered household and attempted to abscond with property not her own, under false pretenses. Miss Annie Dean remains under house arrest pending the deliberation of the town magistrate. It is the opinion of this constable that justice may best be served by mercy, given the circumstances and the character of the deceased. Let it be a lesson that no good comes from giving quarter to outsiders who do not know their place. Filed in truth and order, Constable H.W. Belling, Slatersville Constabulary.
So basically what he said was that, we don't condone murder, it's not acceptable. We can't excuse it. However, there is a foreigner, so we're just gonna let her go. Yeah. Interesting. So Annie was put under house arrest until a trial in which she would be placed in the constabulary's watch at the town jail. She would stay there for only a week before she was released. Eunice, however, wanted absolutely nothing to do with her, and Annie would be taken in by a woman named Martha, in, coincidentally, the same town as Miss Davis, the same place Jane had tried to go before her death. And the case would never be visited again. The end. The end of that video. Just kidding. Years later, more documents would be discovered by the students of Rhode Island, which revealed a much more complex story. The truth would finally come to light, because hidden in the archives of Jane Roye sat torn pages of the same journal she possessed. In it, she would describe events that would alter the public's view of the case forever. These are the secret journal entries that would reveal what really happened that fateful morning of November 13th, 1826.
Journal of Jane Roye, October 19th, 1826. I shouldn't write this down. Truly, I shouldn't. The mailman, Thomas, is his name, I believe. He lingers too long when I hand him the letters. Today, his fingers brushed mine and he smiled as if we'd shared a secret. I laughed, out of habit more than anything, but it felt wrong. Smile, say thank you, and pretend it means nothing. But it did mean something, and I hated how it made me feel. My skin crawled. It wasn't the touch itself, but the assumption in it. As if my being pleasant means I belong to anyone who wants me. As if he has the right to that small intimacy. I wanted to wipe my hand on my skirt, but I didn't. I didn't want Eunice to notice. He looked at me like I was something sweet, something meant to be unwrapped. I don't like it. If I told her, she'd say I invited it. That I should be flattered. That's what women are told, isn't it? A good seamstress knows how to charm, she told me once. A good woman is pleasant, soft, and always willing to be looked at. But the truth is, I've never liked the way men look at me. Not like her. There's a woman who lives down the street, with a gray kerchief and calloused hands. She chops her own wood, I've seen her do it. Once I saw her roll up her sleeves and lift a barrel like it was nothing. I couldn't stop staring. She walks with such purpose, like the world has no claim on her. I've watched her from the window when she passes. There's something in the way she carries herself, a kind of quiet command. I've always admired her. Once she caught me staring and tipped her hat. I blushed. I don't know why. She caught me once, and I flushed so hard I thought I might faint. She just nodded at me. That's not something I could ever say out loud. If Eunice knew, she'd call it unnatural. Strange. She's always reminding me to be sweet, to be proper, to be what a girl should be. But some days I don't feel like a girl, not in the way she means. Some days I just want to be left alone in my own skin. I feel strange writing it, as if the words might catch fire on the page. I would never say it aloud. Eunice would scold me for such thoughts, call them unnatural or foolish. She already watches me too closely, like she's waiting for me to make a mistake she can't ignore. So I keep my eyes lowered. I nod when Thomas smiles. I keep the thoughts folded up like a handkerchief in my apron pocket, where no one can see, but they are mine. Jane. Journal entry, October 29th, 1826. I went walking this evening, just after supper when Eunice had retired to her sewing. I walked past the edge of the orchard and down the slope toward the old stone lane. I didn't plan to see her, truly, but there she was, splitting logs with her sleeves rolled, hair tied back with that same gray kerchief. She saw me. I tried to pretend I was just passing by, but she spoke before I could make up an excuse. "Evenin', miss." Her voice is low and steady, like the hum of warm earth. I said hello and then something foolish about the weather. She smiled. I stood there like a child, unsure of what I wanted. Then she said, "You always look like you've something on your mind." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She asked if I'd like to come sit for a while. I said yes. Journal entry, October 30th, 1826. I went back today. She poured coffee into 2 tin mugs and we sat on her porch, watching the sky turn lavender. She told me her name is Martha. She said it like it was no secret, but I felt as though she'd handed me something precious. We talked about simple things, where she was from, how long she'd lived here, how she came to live alone. Her voice is calm, her silence is comfortable. She doesn't fill space the way Eunice does, with chatter and judgment. To leave, she touched my wrist. "Just, you don't have to pretend," she said. I didn't ask what she meant. I think I knew. Journal entry, October 31st, 1826. Martha kissed me today. It was raining lightly and I'd gone to her porch again. She offered me a blanket. I said no. I was already warm. We didn't talk much. There was something in the air between us, like a thread pulled too tight. She looked at me a long time, then reached out and brushed my hair back behind my ear. I think I stopped breathing, and then she kissed me, softly, like she'd been waiting for me to ask. I've never felt anything like it, not with any of the boys Eunice tried to nudge me toward, not even close. When I returned home, Eunice scolded me for being out late. I didn't answer. I just went to my room, heart pounding. I think I'm in trouble, the kind you don't run from. Journal entry, November 1st, 1826. I spent the night at Martha's. She offered me the cot inside, but I stayed up with her, by the stove, wrapped in a wool blanket and her arms. We didn't say much, there was no need. She smells like smoke and cedar. Her skin is rough in places, soft in others. I memorized the curve of her collarbone, the scar on her left wrist. I whispered things I've never said aloud. She just listened. No judgment, no shame. In the morning, we didn't speak of it. We shared toast and apples and parted like old friends. I think I've never been so happy, and I think I've never been so afraid. Journal entry, November 3rd, 1826. It's over. Not because I wanted it to be, but because it has to be. Eunice asked where I've been going. She's suspicious. She mentioned rumors and said I was beginning to look too free. She said it like a curse. Martha and I met one last time by the river. She held my hand and looked at me like I was something worth holding on to. And then she let go. I didn't cry until I got home. I still smell her on my collar. I will carry her with me, quietly, secretly, like a pressed flower in the folds of my mind. I hope one day I can stop pretending, but not here, not now. I have plans to meet Davis in Providence. There I can be free. Martha told me I need something warm to wear there. I figure I can take Annie's frock. She hasn't worn it, and if she misses it, she can send me a letter. The poor thing. I wish I could take her with me. She would like it in Providence. Maybe once we find a family, I can send her a ticket to Providence, get her a fare.
Martha would hear the news of what happened and be absolutely devastated. Here is her entry the day she found out. I am going to read this one myself just to give it that emotional bearing that it truly deserves. Martha's journal entry, November 13th, 1826. I did not believe him at first. Constable Belling came just after dusk, his hat in his hands like he'd rather be anywhere but my doorstep. Said he had news of a sensitive nature. I didn't understand. That maybe Eunice had taken ill or Annie had run off again. Then he said Jane's name. I stopped breathing. He didn't look me in the eye at first. Just turned his hat in his hands and muttered something about unfortunate news, about a girl named Jane, about struck down and a hearth iron by Annie's hands. How there's no trace of remorse in that girl's eyes. I didn't understand. I just stared at him like he'd spoken a language I'd never heard. The words didn't fit in my mouth. I heard them, but they felt like they belonged to someone else's world. Not mine. Not Jane's. She was just here. Just yesterday or the day before. I've lost count since I last saw her. I can still feel her. Her voice in the folds of silence. Her scent on the blanket she wrapped around her shoulders. The way she smiled like it hurt to hope. She was going to Providence. She had plans. She was going to be free. No, I said, no, she was going to Providence. She had plans. She was leaving. But he just shook his head, like that meant nothing now. He said they found her near the old shed, not far from the orchard. Her hands still clutched the edges of a bundle. Annie's frock, they said. Her face was... He spared me the rest. But I saw it in his eyes. He said Annie was crying when they took her, screaming about how Jane was stealing from her, abandoning her. Didn't even say goodbye, she kept saying. Didn't even say goodbye. I sat on the porch after the constable left. I didn't cry. Not then. I just stared into the woods as if she might walk back out of them like she always did. Hair loose, eyes wild with something unspoken. She'd say my name like it meant something. I think I knew the last time we met that it was goodbye. I didn't think it would be forever. I tried to walk inside, but the cup I'd been drying shattered on the floor and I dropped to my knees among the pieces. My hands bled, but I didn't feel it. I didn't feel it. But I could feel her. The warmth of the stove, the wool blanket tossed across the chair, and the way the air still smelled like apples and cedar. She was here just yesterday, laughing softly, pressing her lips to my cheek like we had time. So much time. I sat on my chair, the same place we drink coffee, the same place she kissed me. The sky was gray again, like the day it began. I thought of her laugh, soft, unsure, like it was something that she hadn't used in a while. I thought of the way she looked at me like I was something good in a world that gave her so little. She was leaving. I knew it. I read it in her eyes when we said goodbye. And she wanted to take Annie. She wanted to take her. And that poor child, so lost, so frightened, thought she was being left behind. Maybe no one ever told her that what love looks like when it's trying to survive. I can't bring myself to hate her. I just wish someone had told her that love isn't something you have to steal or you have to earn, but it can be given freely if only you wait. I don't know who I'm mourning more. I keep thinking of that night by the stove. Jane's head on my chest, her fingers tracing the scar on my wrist like it meant something. She didn't ask me where it came from. She didn't need to. She saw me, and she stayed for a little while. I found her shawl in the grass this evening, the one she always wore, blue at the edges from where. I held it to my face and I breathed in what was left of her. I wanted to scream so bad. The woods wouldn't answer. I lit the fire tonight, though I couldn't eat. Not because it's cold, just to feel something warm where she used to be. Just sat by the stove she loved and held the scarf. When I gave her the first day. The day she pretended she was just passing by. She was never just passing by. She was becoming. And now, she's gone. I don't know what to do with the quiet. I loved her. God help me, I loved her. She told me she'd carry me forever like a flower forever pressed into her. That's what she said. But I don't think that no more. I think I would carry her longer than she ever knew. Mars.
It was discovered that Annie had known all along about the plan, and Jane and Annie had orchestrated a fake death. Their whole plan involved Martha. In order to allow Martha and Jane to be free, and for Annie to escape her abusive mother, Jane would fake her death and head to Providence. And yes, Emily was in on this plan as well. Martha would not be told of this plan until after Annie was released to keep her from getting anything away and for it to look realistic to the jury. With Jane safely in Providence, Martha would be told, to the absolute relief of her, and Annie and Martha would catch a fare to Providence. I will not provide the actual entry to avoid triggering people, but I will provide a summary of what actually happened. Viewer discretion is advised. Thank you. Annie's father, Wilhelm, had passed away a few months before Jane had decided to leave. Annie was shown the mortuary and the process, with Annie claiming that she wanted as much time as she could get before he was buried. Several of the corpses, all poor peasants who were going to be cremated and not given a proper burial, Annie and Jane would end up stealing a corpse and bringing it to the orchard. They would destroy the face with a hearth iron so it was unrecognizable and cover it with leaves and things around it. Annie would take her green frock, which she never wore and was not fond of, as Jane had mentioned that was known, and dressed the corpse in it. Jane would plant the satchel that she was given by the cook over the shoulder and place other items that she owned with it. Jane would leave and board the fare to Providence, and Annie would move back to the house and hide in her room. Annie would confess, and no one would question the identity of the corpse, as it was seen as a shameful death, so it would be quickly buried. Annie would be sent to jail, but then released as they knew the constabulary would be completely biased. Annie would confess to Martha what had actually happened, and Martha would feign a change of heart and would take Annie to Providence. Martha and Jane did reunite, and they lived to about the ages of 42 and 45, with Jane passing from tuberculosis and Martha 3 years later due to smallpox. Annie had already gotten a living by this time. She was married to Richard Pickett and took care of their children, of whom Annie had 2 sons, Lincoln, whom Annie had named after Jane's middle name, and Elliot. Are we all good, guys? Because that sure is a roller coaster. I upload every part to this channel, so stay tuned for the next part, which is going to be a ghost hunt at the same river Jehanne had stayed near and cleaned the clothes with her mother. This has been part 2. If you enjoyed, please hit the like button and consider subscribing. It really helps out the channel. I upload art, ghost-related content, deep dives, and reactions. So let me know what you want to see in the comments. And as always, rock on. This is Vol Berlin, signing off, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!